Welcome back, everyone. Look at technology. We're going to take a bit of a turn this week. There's been so much in the news about email, securing emails, email servers, right? There's all kinds of stuff. And now this something broke this morning on the news about how they're hacking into the information regarding international treaties and things like that. It's a real ongoing situation. Joining me again, Ray Appy, President and CEO of Anise and Associates. So Ray, emails. I went online, looked at a couple of buzz phrases that I thought would trigger some conversation here. Mm-hmm. The one that really stands out among them all is encryption. Mm-hmm. So let's just jump in.
Okay. So you want to start just with email, because this is a big topic. You know,
yes.
We've touched on security a number of times, and it's deep. I mean, so with email, I think thinking practically about the typical viewer for the show, I want to talk about personal users, maybe small, medium businesses. Okay.
Yes.
So with email security, you have to think about several things. How secure is the password on your server? Mm-hmm. And how secure are your users' passwords? Mm-hmm. So there's this concept of password rotation. And it can either be user initiated or sort of manual, or it can be automated through software. I recommend automation so that the users within a business or an institution are required to change their password on a regular basis, and that's up to you. You know, up to the system administrator how often. The more often, the more frustrating it is for the users. You know, because then you have to develop a new password, and you have to remember that, and you shouldn't write it down. You got to memorize it. You know, where do you put it? If I don't use it for 3 days, I forgot it. You know, so there are some practical issues around that, but that's how you keep things secure. So these days, you think about how to select the right password, right? And maybe years ago, you'd pick your birth date or something obvious like that, or something that you know you can remember. Well, that stuff's out, you know, because the hackers are going to look. They're going to look for that if they have any personal information about you at all. Right along with running standard common passwords against your system, they're going to run any personal information that they have against that system and see if they can find an easy way in. And then if they can't get in that way, then they're going to let their software get to work and really try to just keep hammering at it until they get it. So password rotation on a regular basis, at least every month, I think is good, maybe every 2 weeks. That's a bit extreme, but in some organizations, depending on how important security is, maybe even more often.
Right.
And then also the strength of the password. So you got to think alphanumeric with whatever characters also that are allowed. So so you want to have letters from the alphabet. You want to use a mix of uppercase and lowercase. You probably want to have at least 8 or 10 in total, characters and letters. And numbers. You know, you want to mix some numbers in there and maybe some characters. Depending on the system, you might be allowed a dash or a pound sign or whatever, or a hashtag. So you want to mix those things up as best you can, and maybe you can mix some things into that password that are meaningful to you. You know, so you might even try to spell a word alphanumerically, but maybe you use like the number 3 instead of an E, like a backwards capital E. So there's little tricks that that you can teach yourself to do. But then a lot of that can also be automated, right? So you can use a software program that automates password rotation. It just hands them out, says, here's your new password. Or it automates it and says, you have to click here, you have to go change your password. Mm-hmm. So at the user level, that's a really important thing, right? Make them strong and change them as frequently as you can possibly stand it. At the system administration level, it's really the same thing. You know, securing the server itself, means of access to the email server or the email servers to the whole email system is critical. But I think there's also this concept of getting through the back door. So you could perhaps have the best password rotation and strength of password program for your users and on your server or servers, but maybe your network's not secure. So maybe there's some back door in, you know, so you really have to look at the whole architecture of the system and look at it holistically. Can a hacker get into your network some other way? Perhaps the system administrator has done such a great job locking all this down, but he's got a file on his computer somewhere that's got a way for a hacker to get into that email server and actually access that information. If the hacker can get onto the network through some other means and get to that the system administrator's information, he might be able to get through the email server that way. So you really have to look at everything. You know, it's deep. And this, you brought up the word encryption. Encryption standards have evolved over time. A few years ago, it was 128-bit and went to 192. Now, the standard is 256-bit. That has to do with how much information is actually stored in the password. And it's not just the user password, but systems automatically generating login and password information on their own. So, for example, at the network edge or on a network security device, you may have that device changing its own encryption algorithm every 15 seconds, for example. So if a hacker gets to work against that device, they're against the clock. If they can't hack it within that time frame, as they start through the process of elimination, they have to start over again. So,
wow.
as I said, it's deep.
And what you,
I could ramble
are
on,
you kidding me? No, it's just that the information is so valuable. I know I really appreciate it. I just want to cycle back on a couple of things. So, classic front door way is a hacker comes in and tries to figure out what your password is or whatever. I've noticed over the years that it used to be just give us 4 digits.
Yes.
And now it's the characters are 8
More,
to 12
and
and a mix of numbers and loletters. Lowercase and uppercase. I had a friend that had stored that information on his cell phone. Lost his cell phone, and before he knew it, his system had been hacked. I personally think that it's very difficult to keep track of the passwords, right?
Yes, it
is. I write them on my wall. That's how bad it is.
Well,
is that a good idea?
Well, that brings up actually another topic, the concept of a social hack, right?
Yes, sure.
So you write them on your wall. Who can see your wall? You know, somebody might be able to grab your passwords. You leave your phone, and your phone's not secured or locked down. Somebody grabs that, writes a few things down, and off they run. They didn't technically hack anything. That's a social hack, right? So you got to think about where you're leaving your information around.
Boy, I bet you do. Another word I thought that I ran across was architectural impact. And I think you're sort of addressing that, is the architecture of not only your email system, your computer, but the server, and the ways that people could come in, using your phrase, the back door.
Absolutely. So that, to me, that just means thinking about your whole technology program holistically. What are all the different ways that you could potentially get into an organization's network to get to a specific thing that you're looking for? Unfortunately, the bigger and more complex networks get, the more backdoors are possible, and the more work it takes to keep them all locked.
Right, and I'm sure that at Neeson Associates, you've seen everything, right? And you deal with some very large organizations.
We've seen some nasty things as it relates to security. Unfortunately, we have seen some unfortunate breaches. Geez, I just got a letter in the mail the other day from the company that owns our Blue Cross Blue Shield provider, that our personal security for our healthcare plan had been hacked and compromised. So it's like a warning letter. Yeah. So now, so I mean, it's a deep topic, and it's something that you have to be extremely vigilant about all the time.
Well, you know what, Ray? Let's just back up and give you a couple of key points here. Secure passwords. Lock your screen down, right? So that if you leave or whatever, somebody just can't walk in and access the information. Clean your machine. Get rid of viruses and malware and things like that on a regular basis. And of course, there's password rotation, which is something you don't think about. You're just so grateful you remembered your password. But the whole idea that either manually or automatically go through a password rotation to make certain that you're as secure as you can, as much as you can stand it, right? Well, Ray, thank you very much for that information. We'll see you next week.
All right, thank you.
To see this interview again, you can head to our website, looktvonline.com.